Again, it's one of those days, it's one of those videos where you take a look at the news and you go, what the heck is going on in this country? Well, let me lay it out for you. We're taking a look at the Canada Post update and what's going on with the strike. We're taking a look at the tariffs, the update there, and how Canada plans to retaliate. We're taking a look at polling and how Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre are leading, and can they fall? Can Trudeau continue to fall? What's going to come of that? We're also taking a look at Jagmeet Singh at a recent press conference he did where he called Trump a bully, which is rich coming from him. And then we're taking a look at a one-on-one sit-down with the Bloc leader, Yves-François, and what he says with CBC, and how he's saying Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, he's got every right to be embarrassed of how he acted during the vote of non-confidence, which is pretty cool, actually, because now you're seeing a bit of a coalition that no one expected between the Conservatives and the Bloc, which is something I'm actually kind of okay with, even though the Bloc is not really to be trusted federally, because let's be honest, they're the Bloc Québécois, not the Bloc Canada. So their own interests, their only interests, are that of which are within the Quebec borders. But hey, at least they have the foresight to see that Pierre is going to be Canada's next prime minister, which is the most important thing in this video. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's start things off. Let's take a little look-see-poo here. Canada Post says that the latest offer from the union representing its striking workers is unaffordable and unsustainable. Let's take a look here at the actual video.
Patience appears to be wearing thin with each passing day as Canada Post and its unionized employees don't appear to be any closer to ending the strike. On Monday, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers stated it sent a new proposal to the Crown Corp. It also included statements which say, quote, "We have waited far too long for Canada Post to bargain in good faith. True progress requires meaningful engagement, not surface-level proposals or new demands that derail progress." The union adding, "None of us want to be on the picket line, but we cannot continue with management steamrolling workers with random ideas they have to change work rules and impact our safety." In response to the offer, Canada Post says it has made several important moves to close the gap and reach negotiated agreements, but the union has reverted to their previous positions or increased their demands. It went on to say, "Our approach throughout negotiations has been fair, balanced, and straightforward, bringing much-needed flexibility to our delivery model."
Neither side wants to take responsibility for such a long strike into the holiday season. It's really a reflection of the fundamental difference between the two parties.
Canada Post claimed that the union has increased their demands, pointed through the union calling for all contract workers to be made permanent employees. But the union has adjusted its wage demands, moving back from 22% over 4 years to 19%. Earlier in negotiations, Canada Post offered a contract with a 12% salary bump. Analysts say the pressure will mount as the Postal Service's busiest days approach.
As the pressure is building, you see this time is where the union has maximal leverage. And it's now kind of at its maximum. And anytime after this, it's just lose-lose on both sides.
And with the federal government not looking to get involved through legislation or forced mediation, a final agreement is looking more like a defeat than victory for both sides.
Look, postal services, they're vital. They're absolutely vital to, to the world that we live in. We need to be able to send mail. We need to be able to receive mail. But I got to be honest, I don't know exactly yet how I feel about this. Are Canada Post employees underpaid? Yeah. Is what Canada Post or the union doing to the workers greasy? Oh, 100%. They're trying to get rid of as many full-time workers. And this isn't me defending the strike. This isn't me talking crap about the strike. This is just me being objective. And it might be unpopular, and I apologize if it is. Actually, I don't apologize. I apologize for apologizing. All right. We're going to get ourselves in a bit of a loop here, okay? But they're trying to get rid of all of the full-time workers, and they're trying to make Canada Post workers all temporary workers, part-time, with no more than 8 hours per week, which is insane. So can you imagine whatever job that you have, and it's like, hey, yeah, your full-time hours are 38, 40 hours a week, gone. By the way, we're only willing to offer you 8 hours a week, so you don't qualify for EI. Should you be laid off seasonally, so you don't qualify for benefits? Like, that's greasy, right? That's absolutely greasy. Now, this has to do with how Canada Post is managed. This has to do with the union. I don't think it's doing a very good job of being a middleman and negotiator. I don't think this is properly handled. And I mean, to be honest, Canada Post has been running in a $1 billion deficit every single year, and people are fed up. I think the only way to really fix Canada Post is to privatize it, but I don't really see anybody running to that opportunity to like invest in Canada Post because it's a failing business. So we're kind of stuck in this limbo of, I feel very bad for the workers, but I also want this to be resolved, and I just think that this is an absolute shit show. But that's my opinion, folks. I'd love to know yours down in the comments. Next up here, we're going to take a look at Trudeau being trolled by President-elect Trump yet again.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau brushed by reporters and any questions about Donald Trump's late-night post. In it, the president-elect said, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon." A continuation of a comment he made during that dinner at Mar-a-Lago, where Donald Trump suggested if our country can't survive without a trade imbalance, maybe Canada should become the 51st state.
It sounds like we're living in an episode of South Park.
Cabinet reaction ranged from flippant to firm.
Clearly, he's joking. We're a sovereign nation.
We need to focus on being mature as a country and taking responsibility.
Those measured responses from current ministers were countered by a former member of cabinet.
He knows little about the world, let alone Canada.
Former Justice Minister Alan Rock believes the Prime Minister should have a frank call with Trump.
I stress the importance of the PM speaking directly to Trump to tell him to back off this kind of offensive language and this so-called MAGA humor.
Meantime, Ontario Premier Doug Ford appeared on Trump's favorite network, Fox News, for the second time in 2 weeks, talking about tomorrow's virtual meeting with the Prime Minister and other premiers.
We're going to hold the Prime Minister accountable, and he needs to come up with an answer. I'd be more than happy to fly down to Florida tomorrow. If the President had a few minutes, I'd be down there in a heartbeat.
The Prime Minister has called for a Team Canada approach to avoid.
This shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't have premiers that represent individual provinces being in direct talks with the President of the United States. That doesn't make any sense. That's bizarre. That's like the governor of Ohio or Montana or Florida or Texas saying, you know what, we're just going to go right to Justin Trudeau. Like what? That doesn't make any sense. So the only thing I think I've ever agreed with Mark Miller is when he said moments ago that this is turning into a South Park episode. I think that this is getting way out of control. Trudeau should take the L. Trudeau should not try to fight back and turn this into a trade war. He's turning Canada into a laughingstock. Trump got some jabs. He's trolled the world saying Canada's going to be the 51st state, Mexico is going to be the 52nd state. Just leave it at that. Why continue the rhetoric, right? Why feed the beast? Just let it be. You're not gonna outmaneuver Trump. He's like the world's most popular person. Like, it's just not gonna happen. This is horrible.
Avoid Trump's threat of 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports. Flavio Volpe was involved in renegotiating the new NAFTA. And he says the real test will be when the countries sit down to crunch numbers.
And I know what the price of steel and aluminum and critical minerals are. And I know where they have to go to get that. So I know that they know how important we are to them for lots of reasons.
The federal government has promised new investments on the border to address Trump's concerns that illegal drugs and migrants are flowing into the U.S. Asked when we can expect that border plan to be announced, the public safety minister said soon.
It's honestly extremely pathetic that you only really see Canadian politicians and even premiers. Look, I don't want to talk smack about individual premiers, but Danielle Smith, right? Doug Ford, where were you guys for the past several years? This crisis has been ongoing. It's only gotten worse. And people are only now just really rushing. Okay, we got to do this. We got to do that. Let's go. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. We don't want these 25% tariffs. Never mind doing it for another country. Take a breath. Relax. Do your job, right? Do your job. And I hate to criticize the conservatives to any capacity, municipal, provincial, federal, but look, you call a spade. Everybody has been freaking out over these 25% tariffs when everybody should have been doing their job and crunching the numbers, making the money work so that we can invest more in our border, so we can stop all the drugs, so we can stop all this crime, so we can stop all the drug trafficking, so we can stop all the weapons trafficking and actually fix this country. We shouldn't be doing that for America. We shouldn't be doing that for another country. We should be doing that for ourselves. It only took another country, a bigger, badder, meaner country, to threaten us with 25% tariffs for everyone to finally get their head out of their ass. Look, I think Danielle Smith is doing phenomenal things in Alberta. But let's be honest, her, and I don't want to single her out, other premiers, Justin Trudeau, everybody has been dropping the ball at actually attacking these issues until these threats came into play. And look, I like Danielle Smith. I like these other conservative politicians, but it pisses me off. It pisses me off that people are only taking it seriously when there's something that we're now going to lose, right? We're going to lose a lot of money. We're going to have to pay more. We're going to have to pay more in taxes. It's horrible. But that's my opinion, folks. I'd love to know yours. Let's take a look now at passports. Almost 200,000 passports are in limbo because of the Canada Post strike.
Let's bring in CTV's Renee Rogers with more. So, Renee, passports are being held by Service Canada. Does that mean that people can just go pick them up?
Hi, Marcia. Yes, you mentioned 185,000 passports being held. That is up by a whopping 100,000 passports, by 100,000 passports ever since last month. That's because Service Canada began holding them on November 8th in anticipation of a Canada Post strike. And that, in fact, did happen on November 15th, involving 55,000 Canada Post workers. And as you said, the strike now approaching its fourth week. So where do negotiations stand, Marcia? Well, things don't appear to be very good. So in the latest update from the Postal Workers Union, CUPW, they're saying that they have given a list of demands, a new list of demands to Canada Post, and that these demands are meant to bring the two parties closer together. And the union also says it is lowering its previous wage demand. Well, Canada Post coming back and saying, actually, your list of proposals drives us farther away, and that in some cases, you have actually increased your demands. So it's back and forth, Marcia. Now, this, of course, as many people have to now jump through extra hoops if they want to get their passport. And yes, one of those things that they might have to do is to go pick them up because, of course, right now, these passports are not being mailed out, Marcia.
Not being mailed out. Okay, so what are the options for people who mailed their applications just before the strike, Renee?
If you mailed it just before the strike and it has not reached Service Canada, probably your best bet is to go into a Service Canada location and reapply in person. They don't have your application yet, so you're going to have to give them all of that information again. Keep in mind, you might have to pay the application fee once again in order to get this done. Another thing you can do is if you believe Service Canada has your passport and it's being held, and you can actually easily check that on the Service Canada website or by calling the 1-800 number, you can have it transferred to one of 60 locations across Canada that offers pickup services. This could involve a fee, and you'll probably have to show proof of travel as well, Marcia.
Okay, Renee Rogers for us.
Here we go. I remember a time during the blip where it was the same thing. You wanted to renew a passport, you had to show concrete proof of travel. Credit card statements, flights, hotels booked, all of that stuff. Like, what the heck are we coming to? Is this a way for them to control how we travel? Not to sound too, You know what I'm saying? Not to sound too crazy off the edge, but this just seems wild. Like, why are we going through this consistently? Over and over and over. I understand we're going through a strike. I get it. I understand that. But showing proof of travel to then have your passport renewed? What? Who cares? Just give me my freaking passport. That's craziness. Maybe I'm whatever you want to call me, naive, uneducated, but that just seems wild to me. Anyways, moving on here, we've got a political analyst update on what the Conservatives are doing right to stay on top in polling. Let's take a look.
Would it take a Christmas miracle to see some sort of change for the Liberals right now?
Yeah, maybe to build on that metaphor, looks like a lump of political coal, the GST holiday and the $250 check. You know, the thing is that the Liberals have almost tried everything to try to dislodge the trend line. You know, the Conservatives have been in the driver's seat since like more than a year, right? In double-digit advantage, and they're at about a 19-point advantage now. And it looks like this GST holiday and also the $250 check are just not too popular, with no bump for the Liberals. As a result of these announcements, which I'm sure they were hoping for might create a new trend line. Not so much.
Not so much. And so the Conservatives, as you point out, and according to your poll, continue to be in majority territory. What are the Conservatives doing right?
Well, one of the things they're doing right is keeping the focus on the Liberals. You know, my experience is that whoever the election is about and whoever the focus is on loses. And, you know, for Pierre Poilievre, he's been hammering Justin Trudeau on a consistent basis, especially related to the rising cost of living and spending and stuff like that. And he's been riding a blue wave of change. And, you know, the thing is you know, love him or hate him, Pierre Poilievre hasn't really made a mistake. He's been consistent since he was elected leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and there hasn't been anything really to shake the numbers. Maybe the one piece of good news for the Liberals is that the election is not today, because perhaps people would look at all the choices a little differently if the election was imminent.
So there's also indications that Canadians aren't really excited about the GST break. Some think it's a bad idea. Your thoughts on that? Were you surprised?
Yeah, my rule of thumb is that if Canadians are offered a tax break or if they're offered a check, they take it. It doesn't mean that it's going to convert into voting for whoever the government happens to be of the day. You know, when we test on this GST holiday, about half of Canadians, 32% think it's a very poor idea, another 19% a poor idea, and about 1/3 think that it's a good idea to one extent or another. So basically, by a margin of 2-1, people give that a thumbs down as an initiative. And on the check, that's even less popular than the GST HST holiday. You can see that about 66% of Canadians give a thumbs down to that, and only 17% think that it's a good idea to one extent or another. So, the $250 check for working individuals who earn up to $150,000, not popular. I think for the Liberals, maybe they should have done nothing, because more people are against this than they are for either one of these initiatives.
Well, I'd like to dig a little deeper on that last point. 43% not.
To be honest, I'll be extremely honest. The best thing the Liberals could do for polling and for popularity is to shut up. That's the best thing they could do. No more talks to the press, no more appearance in question period, and just don't do anything. That's the only way. Ferme la bouche. Ferme la calice de bouche. That's the only thing that they could do to go up in popularity. Because then people would be like, oh, well, okay, I guess we're just doing politics now. I mean, that's just speculation. I'm not trying to give them any pointers by any means. I'm just trying to be a little funny and pointing out that every time they open their mouth, every time they talk, every time they announce policies, give updates, open their mouth to any capacity, zoop, they go down in the polls. It's quite funny, to be honest. I've never seen anything like it. And that wraps that segment up. Next, we're going to be taking a look at Jagmeet Singh and what he's got to say about tariffs, about Trump, about everything that's going on. And reporters are actually pushing back on Jagmeet, which is cool, which is phenomenal, actually. Hey, buddy, you didn't answer the question. Try again. Let's get into it.
I want to start off talking about tariffs. The threat of Donald Trump's tariffs, 25% across the board, is a direct threat to hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs. Imagine what it feels like right now for a worker in a trade-sensitive sector who's wondering, will my job be the first to go when those tariffs are put in place? This is serious. That doesn't just mean that that worker loses their job, the entire family is impacted. So what is the response to these serious threats by the Prime Minister? The Prime Minister is telling us it's okay, oh, he's just joking, Donald Trump's just making jokes, no big deal. It is a big deal. On top of that, what we're seeing from Trudeau is that anytime Trump says jump, he says how high. That is not strength, that is not actually responding to what's going on. And then, when Trump trash talks Canada, we got the leader of the Conservative Party repeating that garbage. That hurts Canada, that hurts Canadian workers. What we need to do is acknowledge that Trump is a bully. Bullies look for weakness. That's why he's trolling us. So we need to send a message of strength. We need to have a real war room ready to go, fighting for Canadian jobs with unions at the table. We need to put in place and get ready to put in place retaliatory tariffs. We have to make it clear, if Trump picks this fight, it's going to hurt both of us, and it's not a fight that he wants. We have to show strength, that we're willing to do whatever it takes to protect Canadian jobs. We have to also make sure it's very clear that tariffs on Canada don't just hurt Canadians, it's going to hurt Americans. We need to make that message very clear, make sure the pain is felt, and so he knows this is not the direction he wants to go. We have to defend Canadian jobs, and that's my commitment.
Okay, so I'm going to ask two questions about the premiers. First of all, Premiers Fury, Smith, Ford, and so on have been either on Fox News, on CNBC very soon, or going to the United States or holding conference calls with their governors to get the message out. First of all, do you approve of that? Do you like what's happening? And then I've got a second question.
Well, we certainly need to get our message out to the United States, but I've seen very mixed messages coming out from some of these Conservative premiers that are not making it clear that we need to defend Canadian jobs. I want to see a strong approach that makes it clear that everyone in Canada wants to defend Canadian jobs, that we reject the misinformation of Trump. We don't want to repeat the same things that he's saying about our borders. It's clearly not true when he says that the Canada-US border is the same as the Mexico-USA border. That's clearly not true. Repeating those lies hurts Canadians, hurts our jobs, and I'm concerned that the Conservatives have not been very strong on that point.
So what do you want to see from the virtual meeting of the First Ministers with the Prime Minister?
I want to see a clear commitment that we are ready to show strength. What does that mean? We have to show that we are ready to retaliate with tariffs. We need a war room to fight back and protect jobs in Canada, and one that includes unions at the table who represent those workers. We need to show that this is a fight that's going to cost Americans and Canadians. It's going to hurt. So it's not a fight that Donald Trump wants to take.
On the checks, are you even gonna let any legislation on that come to the floor of the House if they don't expand it to meet your needs?
Yeah, we've been very clear on the checks. We do not believe that checks that exclude seniors and people living with disabilities are appropriate. We think it's wrong. And so we've said they've got to fix that. They've got to make sure that seniors get some support. It is wrong that someone earning $140,000 will get a check, but a senior living on their own, barely getting by, gets nothing. That is wrong. We made it clear.
If they don't, are you even going to let it get to the House? You didn't answer the question. Are you going to let it get to the floor of the House? The House is gridlocked right now.
I like that. We're going to go back a second. I really, really, really like that. How reporters are pushing back on politicians that don't answer fucking questions. It pisses me off. It pisses you off. Now, question period is its own little song and dance, right? I don't agree that politicians should be able to get away without answering questions. But at least during these press conferences, reporters have the ability to say, you didn't answer the question. And they ask it again, maybe a little bit differently. And I like that a lot.
You're going to let it get to the House. You didn't answer the question. Are you going to let it get to the floor of the House? The House is gridlocked right now. Are you even going to allow it to get to the House unless they meet your needs?
Yeah, we've been very clear. We're not going to support anything that excludes seniors.
Next week is the fall economic statement. Have you made specific demands to the Liberals that you want to see specific measures in there to give your support for it?
For?
The fall economic statement.
What I understand, the fall economic statement is just an update. If there's going to be any legislation, we haven't seen it yet. We don't know if there's any legislation. We will make a determination on our support, like we said, by a case-by-case basis. So we'll look at any laws and decide. But so far, we've not seen any heads up that there's going to be any laws presented.
Look, today's one heck of a day for Jagmeet. I'll be honest. He criticized old white people. He's being pretty racist. He's saying that Trump is a bully. He keeps propping up the Trudeau government while criticizing everything that the Trudeau government does. And he's been voting against Pierre poilievre while simultaneously saying that we need to do things that are quite literally the exact same thing that Pierre poilievre is saying. It's really not looking good for Jagmeet Singh. And I don't know how he can hold on to any more support. Like, I get that Liberals and NDP supporters, some of them may have been bonked on the head a couple of times. One too many times, you might add. And I get it. Look, we all have different backgrounds. But there's going to come a time where NDP supporters, Jagmeet Singh specific supporters, are going to say, oh, okay, this guy's full of crap. I can't support this guy anymore. And that day is coming. It's already happened for a lot of people. But that day is absolutely right around the corner for a lot of people. And finally, we've arrived at the Poutine stop. Yves-François Poutine Escargot sits down with CBC to talk about how NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is a load of crap. Let's get right into that.
Okay, to discuss the state of this government and its books, I'm joined now by one of the leaders of one of the two parties that voted non-confidence in the government yesterday. That, of course, is Yves-François, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, in case you're expecting to see Pierre poilievre sitting here. Mr. Blanchet, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming in today.
Un plaisir.
Let's start with this non-confidence vote yesterday. You had said previously that you would only vote non-confidence in the government. It was in the best interests of Quebec. That motion yesterday was designed to almost embarrass Jagmeet Singh. Why is that something the Bloc Québécois voted for?
Oh, first, I believe that Mr. Singh deserves to be embarrassed because the way he behaves is renouncing his responsibility as the leader of an opposition party. We had said a long time ago that if we did not achieve two specific goals, we would vote against the confidence in this government.
That's the old age security increase and supply management.
We could have started with that because, we cannot trust too much the polls, but our numbers are very, very, very good. But we said that we had the responsibility first to try to do something useful for Quebec and Canada elders and agricultural producers under supply management rule, which protects the quality and the price of what we eat and drink in Quebec and Canada.
So does this mean that every confidence motion from now on, you will vote non-confidence in the government?
It depends on how it is written. If it is a provocation against Quebec, of course, we will not support the motion. But otherwise, I do not know what will come after an election. But we have reached a moment when Quebecers and Canadians are entitled to compose a new parliament, whatever happens the morning after. It's about time because this government has been unwilling or unable to do its job for the whole session, which is being completed in the coming days. Nothing happened. They quite bluntly lied to the people, saying that what we proposed for elders was too expensive, and they did put on the table something that would have costed twice the same amount of money. They said that we were not precise enough about those who would benefit from our proposal for elders, and they were much, much less precise because they gave money to people who don't need it at all.
You're talking about the $250 checks and the HST holiday.
The holiday.
But there would be a difference, Mr. Blanchet, in one. I'm not defending the policy. The government can do that. But this would be a one-time thing, whereas the OAS is forever and growing as more people retire, right? Yeah. So there is a difference in the cost to the Treasury.
There is a difference, but the government said that they were willing to negotiate something about that. And I believe they said that only to get more time,
Right.
with which they did nothing. And that's the problem. So now we have no confidence in Mr. Trudeau's government. And at the very beginning of 2025, I would ask him to have the courage to put his 10 years in power on the table and tell Quebecers and Canadians to deal with it, make a choice.
Can he credibly do that while the threat of the tariffs hang over the country from President-elect Donald Trump? I mean, when you say the beginning of 2025, do you mean after the 20th of January when the president is inaugurated and we have an idea of whether or not he's going to impose the tariffs? Because surely you wouldn't want a caretaker government for a 6-week campaign with the economy getting hammered like that, right?
Factually, it cannot really happen before the very end of January.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be not a new government. Actually, there might be 2 new governments. But what Mr. Trump said and keeps saying is a threat in order to achieve some goals. Either we agree with it or not, or either we agree with the way he does things and says things or not. Mainly what he says is those are issues about which I have made my whole campaign, and I have to deliver something to the population, and I've got the bad guys, they are Mexico and Canada, and now he's doing very efficiently what he was not so successful doing a few years ago. He is the master of the field, he plays with people, and he is very successful at that, either we like it or not. Our job is not to do rhetorics against the American president, is to adapt.
Right.
He will pose some challenges, not for the beginning of 2025. He will pose challenges for 4 years, and we have to be as prepared as we can. And we said last week, all the leaders together, we said, either we will implement it or not, that we should not do partisan politics with that. We should present a more united front, because Mr. Trump will respect none of the leaders and will not respect Quebec or Canada if we are not more coherent in our way to do things, which we are not now.
Right. So when you talk about the Prime Minister putting his government on the line, essentially, or giving an opportunity, you talk about when Parliament comes back on the 27th of January, right around then. So if you believe that this government is a spent force, as you've essentially described them, they're unable to control the agenda in Parliament because of the minority situation, and there is criticism of their ability to handle Trump a second time. Do you think Mr. Poilievre is a better option for the country? Because you're not going to be Prime Minister unless the bloc changes dramatically between now and the next election.
Oh, if we did change dramatically, I might.
No, look, the bloc is tailored specifically to Quebec. There's no chance that the bloc will be Prime Minister. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? Out here in BC, on the East Coast, in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, you're not voting for the Bloc Québécois. So, like, you know, at least he's not delusional like Jagmeet Singh is. Jagmeet Singh is not going to be Prime Minister either. There's no way. I'll bet my entire, like, everything that I own, I'll bet my house on the fact that Jagmeet Singh will not be Prime Minister of Canada. Okay, it's just not going to happen. It's going to come down strategically to Pierre Poilievre, but Trudeau and all the major woke cities. Right? We thought that there was a real chance here in BC with the recent premier elections that we could flip BC for the first time in like freaking 10,000 years from NDP or BC Liberal to BC Conservative, and it almost worked. But it came down strategically to the major areas within BC. Vancouver, right? Things like that. Vancouver Island, like Victoria, all the major cities. So it's going to be the same thing with the federal election. But it's not looking good for Justin Trudeau. He's got like 41 or 39 projected seats. So unless he's able to swing a lot of the major cities, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, any others that I missed, right? It's just not really going to work for Justin Trudeau. So all roads, all signs are leading towards Pierre Poilievre being conservative or being the Prime Minister of Canada. So they can joke, oh, Bloc, you're not going to be, like, why even entertain that, man? They know, we all know.
I would not want that. However, what I just said is that we will have, at some point, to work in a coherent fashion to present a more united front, because our interests might, most of the time, be the same. We should not do rhetorics facing Mr. Trump. We should say, okay, to the United States, in 3, 5, or 9 years from now, what are our common goals in terms of migrations, in terms of safety, security, the borders, and trade? And we should privately negotiate the way to achieve those common goals and quit doing short-term politics, because it serves nobody's interests. And I do not mind so much what Canadians will choose as a government. We propose to Quebecers to be the best and strongest voice possible for Quebec. It does not mean that what we do is bad for Canadians. Let's say this proposal we made about supply management or elders, a large, very large majority of Canadians supported the Bloc about that.
Right.
So we may be useful, but our purpose is to represent Quebec.
But when you talk about the short-term partisan rhetoric that you say is not helpful in this moment, I mean, you lead a sovereigntist party, and you are willing to get on Team Canada, for lack of a better word, in the time that is available to deal with President Trump on the tariffs. The Prime Minister and Mr. Poilievre are back and forth about who is really letting the country down. Do you think there could be political unity under either of these leaders, given the way things are right now with the Prime Minister, and given the way things might go under a potential Prime Minister Poilievre, based on what you saw in that meeting last week?
There are 4 or 5 parties in the Parliament. In the coming election, each one of those will get a mandate. And the population will decide how many MPs each one of those do have in the room. And from that point, knowing that it will be the case and the definition of the Parliament for probably 4 years, then we will have to sit together. And what we did last week with all the leaders should be done on a much more regular basis, because it does lower the rhetorics, makes people much softer. The question period that followed that meeting was the most quiet one and civilized one that we had seen in a long time. So after the next election, we should, either we like it or not, or either we like each other or not, have the sense of responsibility to define common ground facing challenges coming from United States.
Yeah, I think you have a very good point when you say if people in this town talk to each other face-to-face in private a little bit more, it might be better for everybody. One of the things people are talking about today, though, Mr. Blanchet, is the size of the deficit, the state of the finances. We do not know what is coming in the fall economic statement, but there are all indications that things have worsened on the fiscal side. Unemployment is pushing near 7%. It's coming very, very late, and I know there are procedural issues, but if you've got a good financial story to tell, you want to tell it earlier. You still want an increase in things like OAS. Can you push for that, knowing that things are getting worse in the financial situation for the federal government? And what do you make of what we expect will be a bad situation next week?
If Mr. Trudeau would have had his way, what we expect to be around $46 billion deficit would have been $50 billion deficit. The money he would have distributed generously would have been given to people who don't need it. The people who spend the money the most rapidly and the most directly back into the economy are those who have less. So what we said, and we made a comparison with oil and gas industry, which receives between 10 and 13 billion of dollars a year from federal government. We said, if you can give so much money to people who really don't need it and cost a lot afterwards because of the effects of climate change, you could give money to 4 million of Canadians and Quebecers who really need it. So this is quite different. Spending money, paying taxes is something that I believe people do accept, but they want it to be done right, the proper way.
Man, I couldn't have said that better myself. I don't inherently have a problem with paying taxes. It is what it is. It sucks, but it's how much taxes you're paying. And that's the game of life, right? In order to have a good credit score, you have to be able to pay your taxes. You have to be able to manage debt wisely. And then you could borrow more money from the bank, which then puts you in more debt. But as long as you're managing it, then it's good debt, not bad debt, and blah, 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 blah. And then our taxes go towards building, fixing our roads, building new infrastructure, and all this stuff. Social programs should probably be at the tail end of that list of things, right? I don't think that social program should be front loaded. And that's what Justin Trudeau's done to try to buy more votes. He's saying, okay, all you people that are hurting, all childcare, everything, we're going to just give you everything that you want. And it doesn't even work. That's the thing. He's put so much money into it, but it doesn't work. So that's mismanaging our taxes. I'm not talking about a couple $1 million or a few $100 million. We're talking about billions of dollars, right? And our taxes go towards healthcare. I once saw, I don't know where it is. I don't know what country it's in, but I once saw a phenomenal breakdown of somebody's taxes. It might have been on Reddit years ago. I don't even remember, but it was a bar graph. Okay. It was a horizontal bar graph, and it showed 20% of taxes went to healthcare. 6% of taxes went towards roads. 2% went towards education. 0.7% went towards this and that. And that was the breakdown of someone's taxes. And I'm like, man, that's freaking genius. I wish we had that. Imagine you pay your taxes, right? You get a tax bill, like, shit. It's that time of year. So you go to your accountants. You pay your taxes, you get your money back, all right? And it has a printout. You paid $5,000 in taxes, right? $20,000 in taxes, whatever the hell number you want to come up with. And then it breaks down out of $20,000 in taxes, right? You paid $7,235.27 went towards healthcare. Okay? Cool. I know where my money's going. Like, that's the transparency that we need. And I don't have this example. It was a photo that I saw on Reddit. I wish I did. I wish I kept it. I wish I printed it and framed it on my wall for whichever user online from whichever country in the world this is from. But that is a phenomenal way to have transparency within your government. And I don't think we have that. I don't think you can log into my CRA and you see any of that crap. But at least that's a step in the right direction. Because then you can say, hey, look, I may or may not have a say in exactly what percentage of my money goes where, but this big chunk here, this 5%, what does that mean? Miscellaneous, right? We need some more explanations. At least it would be a breakdown. That's all people want is transparency. That's all people want. At least that's a step in the right direction for what people want.
For some relevant purposes.
Right. I one last question. The premiers are going to meet with the Prime Minister tomorrow to talk about Donald Trump, and apparently they're going to be briefed, at least in a high-level way, on what the plan is to deal with the border concerns raised by the President-elect, which are at the basis of the tariff threat. What do you hope to see? Quebec has had a lot of trouble with Roxham Road over the years. What do you want to see from the Prime Minister and his cabinet in terms of addressing these border concerns raised by the President-elect?
I want to see details and resources. First, adding resources with RCMP guys on the border, or people at the customs, or improving the speed with which the different files are treated, those individual files are treated, sorry.
Yep.
This is something the Bloc has been asking for years.
Sorry.
I'm sad.
A bunch of bullshit came out of me.
More influence on Mr. Trudeau than we did.
I'm allergic to bullshit.
Basically, what they are doing is something we have asked for a long time. Two things are still to be ascertained. The amount of money. It does require resources. And the people to achieve the job, to do the job, have to exist.
We're hearing about $1 billion for the budget.
Yeah.
For the border, sorry.
So how will it be spent with what expected results? So this is something very important, the way it's done and the amount of money. This is what we want to see, and I hope that the prime ministers will not make a show of being the one with the biggest arms facing Mr. Trump. They have to work together in order to reassure people and send a message to Washington that we are going to be fair, but we are not going to be weak.
Yves-François Blanchet, the leader of the Bloc Québécois. We always appreciate your time, sir. Thanks for coming in today.
It was a pleasure.
There you go, folks. There you go. That's what the leader of the Bloc has to say. Let me know down in the comments what you guys have to say about that topic right there. Do you believe the Bloc leader? Do you not believe him? Do you trust him? Do you not trust him? Let me know your reasoning down below. And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up today's longer than normal video. I do apologize, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.